Wrestling matches have been rated by Dave Meltzer on the 5-star scale since the early 1980s. But what about the matches on the other end of the spectrum? There have been plenty of matches in wrestling history that have received a negative star rating, and today we're going to look at the matches that were so horrible they made history. This is Remember Wrestling, and this is every minus 5-star match in wrestling history. How many are there? Well, quite fittingly, there are 5, and we're going to talk about them in chronological order. Number 1. Junkyard Dog vs Moondog Spot, WWF Wrestling Classic 1985. The first of these terrible tussles took place on a show that a lot of modern wrestling fans may never have heard of. The Wrestling Classic is sort of the black sheep of WWE pay-per-views. It happened in November of 1985, sandwiched between the first 2 WrestleManias, and then was never done again. The show revolved around a one-night, 16-man tournament, and it might be the worst tournament in WWE history. None of the 14 tournament matches went beyond 10 minutes, before it was eventually won by the Junkyard Dog. On his way to victory, JYD took on the only other dog in the field, Moondog Spot, in the quarterfinals. Spot was a tag team wrestler along with Moondog Rex. He got to this point by winning his first match by count out in 27 seconds, against, of all people, Terry Funk. Of all the matches we talk about in this video, this one probably isn't the worst, but it might well be the stupidest. It lasted all of 45 seconds, and here is what happened. Spot dropped JYD. Spot missed a second rope splash. JYD hit 2 crawling headbutts, followed by a standing headbutt that put Spot down. There had been no referee in the ring for the whole match, so JYD just countered the pin himself before immediately leaving. If this happened today, I don't think it would have got a rating at all, but maybe Meltzer felt like he had to give every match something in those days, and so he handed out the first ever minus 5-star rating. JYD went on to beat none other than Macho Man Randy Savage in the final, albeit by another countout. If you need further proof of how much a farce this tournament was, one of the other quarterfinals was Randy Savage vs Ricky Steamboat, and it ended after 4 minutes. WrestleMania 3, this was not. Number 2, Mr. T vs Roddy Piper in a boxing match, WrestleMania 2. To date, this is the only WrestleMania match to receive a minus 5-star rating. To prepare for this video, I watched it for the first time, and I think the only reason why I didn't hate it was because I was watching it on double speed. Mr. T's involvement in the first WrestleMania was absolutely crucial to the show's success, as he teamed with Hulk Hogan against Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. Without the 18 star, who knows if the show would have become the grand spectacle it is today. Therefore, it only made sense that WWE would go back to the well for the sequel in 1986. Piper held genuine dislike for Mr. T because he didn't like the fact that an outsider celebrity was getting all the shine on the biggest show of the year. WWE decided to capitalize on this real life beef by booking T and Piper to go one-on-one in a boxing match, which also served to continue the storyline from the first Mania. Just a heads up, if you ever want to watch Mr. T box, just watch him in Rocky 3, because it'll be a lot better than what you see here. The fans in the arena paid for a wrestling show, so I'm not sure they were excited to see a boxing match as the main event of this card. It wouldn't do a lot for boxing enthusiasts either, with the action grinding to a halt on multiple occasions. Then, Piper knocks T down in the second round, and he stays on the mat for 25 seconds, which in any other boxing event anywhere in the world would be a KO win for Piper. But for some stupid reason, the fight goes on. Then the same thing happens the other way around in the third round, with Piper literally being punched out of the ring, yet still being allowed to continue. I should mention as well that the commentary from Vince McMahon and celebrity guest Susan St. James is atrocious. By round 4, the pair of them are just flailing at each other like windmills with legs, when Piper pushes over the ref and body slams T, getting himself disqualified. And that was the end of the New York section of WrestleMania 2, with the fans in the arena having to watch the Chicago and LA portions of the show on TVs, like everyone else at home. Let's just say that when you see hype videos for WrestleMania, there's a reason why you don't see anything from this match, or indeed much of WrestleMania 2 as a whole. Number 3, Hulk Hogan vs The Warrior, Halloween Havoc 1998. This is certainly the most famous minus 5-star match there is. Hulk Hogan vs the Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 6 is one of the most legendary matches in the show's history. 2 fan favourite juggernauts colliding in front of over 60,000 people in Toronto's Skydome, culminating with Warrior being crowned world champion in arguably the best match either man ever had. When they met again in WCW 8 years later, a lot had changed in wrestling. The heroic Hulkster was now the villainous leader of the NWO, and Warrior was coming to the end of his in-ring career. If you watch this match with no expectations and the sound turned off, it begins much like their first one in terms of moves. But you have to remember that these men were 8 years older by this stage, and neither man's skill had improved in that time. So the match just meanders along without much story or work rate, and the crowd is pretty quiet throughout. What sends this match from regular bad to famous bad is the messed up ending. Hogan was supposed to throw a fireball in Warrior's eyes as part of the finish, but instead the fireball went off in Hogan's face, burning his eyebrows and leaving him bloody. So the two men had to make stuff up as they went along for a few moments before Hogan's nephew Horace wandered out and bashed Warrior with a chair for Hogan to get the pin. The legacy of the two Hogan-Warrior matches are diametrically opposed. One is revered while the other is reviled. To his credit, Hogan has taken the blame for the match being as bad as it was, citing his failure to execute the fireball. Meanwhile, Warrior probably put it best when he said, "It's weird that my best match ever was with Hogan, and at the same time my worst match ever was with Hogan." Number 4. The Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov versus the Bushwackers, Heroes of Wrestling. When you think about it, it does make sense that one of the worst matches of all time took place on arguably the worst wrestling pay-per-view of all time, and Heroes of Wrestling is a notorious disaster. What was supposed to be a super indie show with stars of the past slowly transformed into an absolute calamity in real time. Of the 8 matches on this card, 5 of them received minus stars, with this tag match between two WWF teams from the 80s hitting rock bottom. It's a real shame, particularly for the Bushwackers, who hit the other end of the scale in 1986 with a legit 5-star match in the NWA. However, in 1999, they were much older and far less mobile, and that goes double for their opponents, Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik. For a lot of this match, at least one of the men has to hold onto the top rope so they can stay upright, and the offense delivered is super soft throughout because they can't really bump. The heels did a good job of getting heat with some anti-USA stuff, but that's more or less the only thing that was done well. The commentary is also dreadful, even worse than the WrestleMania match. The ending stretch is pretty sad to watch, as you can really see the extent to which these guys can't move, completely taking away any drama or excitement there might have been. It ends when Volkov accidentally clatters Sheik and the Bushwackers capitalise to win. Hilariously, the referee delivers a fast 3 count, as if he wants the match to be over as quick as possible as well. Meltzer's partner in crime, Brian Alvarez, has repeatedly cited this as his pick for the worst match of all time. And if you think it couldn't get any worse for this pay-per-view, just wait until the main event. Or on second thoughts, don't. Now, when you think of the phrase minus 5 stars, you probably think of that one soundbite from Botchamania.
Minus 5 stars!
That is the aforementioned Alvarez, and he uttered those words while talking about Sharmell versus Jenna Maraska from TNA Victory Road 2009. Amazingly, it won't actually be on this list, as even though Alvarez rated it minus 5, Meltzer only gave it minus 4. The only explanation I can come up with was that it was saved by this camel clutch that Sharmell did during the match, which actually looks pretty good. The wrestling world would have to wait another 16 years for another negative minus 5-star match, and when it did come, it came across the border in Mexico. Number 5. The Villains versus the Clowns, Triple Mania 23. There are 2 main top promotions in Mexico, CMLL and AAA. For the latter, their annual supercard is Triple Mania, and on the 2015 edition of the show, one of the matches was a 6-man tag, pitting Villain 3, 4 and 5 against Monster Clown, Murder Clown, and Psycho Clown. This match is honestly worth watching just to see the entrance for the clowns. They have a full-on circus parade, complete with jesters, a juggler riding a unicycle, and a bloke who is just twirling a big cube around. The English commentary tries to stress to us that the clowns and the villains were members of 2 prestigious wrestling families that had been feuding for decades, but you wouldn't really know it watching this match. There's no real urgency to it, which isn't really what you'd expect from a match featuring a monster, a murderer, and a psycho all teaming together. A big problem is that the villains are all very old at this stage. At the time of the match, the average age of the 3 men was 56. They're also all wearing purple masks and singlets, and it's not a flattering look to say the least. The clowns work pretty well, but at one stage a clown stops pinning one of the villains because he wants a piece of the other villain, which doesn't make any sense at all. Then, that villain just kicks him low and pins him. The match wasn't great, and the finish was ridiculous. So, those are all the minus 5-star matches in wrestling history, according to Dave Meltzer at least. If you had to watch one, I'd recommend Junkyard Dog vs Moondog Spot, purely for how short it is. Other than that, you can watch whatever of them you want. Or, as I suggested earlier, you can watch something else, and I certainly wouldn't blame you for that. I do hope you enjoyed this video though. If you did, considering hitting the like button, leaving a comment down below, or subscribing to the channel.